Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Lubert, and welcome to our panel today, Women in Entrepreneurship. Today's conversation has been brought to you by the Women's Center in partnership with UMAA, as well as the Office of Business and Economic and Community Development. Thank you and welcome. Next, I'd like to thank our members and donors of the Alumni Association for powering our alumni webinar series. To learn more about how you can become a member, please visit umnalumni.org/membership. I'd also like to bring your attention to the Minnesota Alumni Market, which is the place to support U of M alumni entrepreneurs. Alumni-owned businesses and services can sign up to get listed, and shoppers can find and support alumni businesses of all types. Check it out at mnalumnimarket.com. All right, so before we get started, we have a few housekeeping notes to make here about Zoom. If you're interested in dialing in and listening in by phone, you can use the information on the screen presented to you. I'm also happy to type it in the chat as well. If you have questions at any time, you may ask them by dropping them into the Q&A box to ensure that it does not get lost in the chat feature. We'll reserve the last 15 minutes or so of today's conversation for your questions. So be sure to enter them into the Q&A feature. We'll also be sharing the recording of today's session with all registrants. So for some reason, if you need to leave a little bit early, no worries, you'll receive the recording, and so will everyone who's registered for today. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Anitra to begin introducing herself, and then we'll move on to our panelists as well. So Anitra Kolich is from the U of M Women's Center, and she'll be our moderator today.
Thanks, Rebecca. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anitra Kotlidge. I use she and her pronouns, and I direct the University of Minnesota Women's Center on the Twin Cities campus. And we're really excited to be here with all of you and our panelists today, and to be in partnership with UMAA and OBCD. So I'm going to let the panelists really introduce themselves because they know themselves and their work better than I could ever describe it. So I'm going to ask them to share their names, their university affiliation, which is also listed here on the slide for your reference, the name of their company, what their company does, and how long they have been an entrepreneur. So let's go ahead and start it off with Michelle, and let's get it started there.
Thank you. My name is Michelle Mazzara. I'm the owner and founder of Luvafoodie, which is a clean eating brand. I started Luvafoodie 7.5 years ago, and I was a communication major at University of Minnesota, Bachelor of Arts, and it's my pleasure to be here today.
All right, let's go with Joy.
Hello, my name is Joy McBreen. Want to point out that I am parked. I'm not driving. We all good, peeps. This is our new virtual world. I am the founder and CEO of a social enterprise called Faranita. Faranita, we partner with 8,000 women in 9 different countries to create beautiful fair trade jewelry, gifts, and accessories. Pay 2 to 4 times minimum wage, plus health insurance, educational scholarships, all the good stuff. I graduated from the U of M, my undergrad in business in 2011, and started this iteration of Faranita in 2015, but initially actually started different iterations while I was still in school there.
Great, thanks. And let's round it out with Alex.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Alex West Steinman. I'm the co-founder and partner at The Coven. We're a community for radical change makers. We have 2 co-working spaces in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and a growing digital community with on-demand videos and content, all for leadership development. I graduated from the University of Minnesota in 2011 in the College of Liberal Arts, which I love, the CLA, forever and always, and spent a lot of time in Murphy Hall as I graduated with a journalism degree and a minor in Spanish.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for introducing yourselves. The Q&A is open, so as we're kind of going through the conversation, if y'all have questions for our panelists, which we'll get to, we'll have some time at the end to ask questions, but you're free to just put them in the Q&A, and we will get to that in the last 15 or 20 minutes or so for some audience discussion. I'm going to start us off with the first question, which is what inspired all of you to develop your business ideas, and what kind of unmet need did your idea address? And I can pick folks if folks don't want to jump in. Let's start with Joy.
Right. So I started Farinita, trigger warning situation. We partner with survivors of sexual and domestic violence around the world because I learned that financial insecurity is the #1 reason why women stay in abusive partnerships. I wanted to work with survivors because it's a history that I also share, and wanted to figure out how can we create economic self-sufficiency for women and especially for survivors. So started a fair trade business because of that. And I first was like experimenting with what it could look like while I was a student at the University of Minnesota, and had a lot of great professors who really encouraged me to keep going. One that was like, you're an idiot if you don't start this business. Like, it's good for the world, it's good for you. You know, you can make it profitable. Let's go. And so started it back in 2015. We're a public benefit corporation. And so we report to the state of Minnesota every year on our impact as well. And our whole concept is, how do we create economic self-sufficiency for women, for survivors? And we've seen that manifest itself in a lot of really beautiful ways with incredible change-making women all over the world. Currently, we partner with 8,000 women in 9 countries, organized into 19 different cooperatives. And then we sell to about 1,000 stores around the US and Canada right now, and then also online, also in the Alumni marketplace. And that's more less where we're at. Oh, the unmet need was more around there's this statistic, and I might mess it up, but it's something like 72% of millennials are more likely to purchase a mission-based product if they're given a comparable alternative. And I was finding that I was so excited about the idea of ethically produced goods, about fair trade items and whatnot. But I wasn't finding anything that was actually created for me. A lot of times it was like, it looked like it was maybe made for my grandma, which nothing against it, but wasn't really fitting my own style or my price point. And so we've partnered with artisans to try to make cute, ethical, and affordable fair trade jewelry and accessories. Our average price point right now is $18, and so it's something we're proud of, that we're able to stick to this affordable price point to bring fair trade into a more mainstream audience as well. So that's the unmet need we've been looking at.
Thanks, Joy. Let's go to Alex about what got you started.
Thanks, Anitra. So there's 4 co-founders of The Coven, myself and 3 others, and we all came from the advertising industry. Actually, 3 of us graduated from the University of Minnesota, so lots of go for love in The Coven. And when we were working in our respective agencies, doing kind of advertising and public relations in a number of different departments, we found it really challenging to see ourselves leading the organizations in some respects. So much of our work while we were in the industry was centered around helping women, non-binary and trans folks kind of advance in their careers, specifically BIPOC folks, getting into the industry and then staying in. What we found was there were so many, great internship programs out there, but inclusion was not a part of the conversation at that time. And so a lot of people left the industry, and I saw so many women leave when they got to a certain level, kind of mid-level or even senior level, and were just not invited to the leadership table. There was a moment that I remember not so fondly of recognizing. I had advanced to communications director within the agency, and I looked back at when I started at the agency, and I learned what my counterparts were paid. And it was more than I was paid in the very beginning. And so that gap kind of only exacerbated itself over time. And by the time I was kind of in the most senior role that I could possibly have, and was like kind of half at the leadership table sometimes, invited for, their diversity quotient. I was not accepted as my whole self. You know, people thought that I was too loud. I, had too many opinions. That was like truly a thing that was written on one of my reviews. I have too many opinions. And that I was, kind of what the word was self-promoting, which is funny because I was doing PR for the agency, which is like literally my job was to promote the agency. When I remember walking into one of my business partner Aaron's house and just being like, I don't know that we're going to change this industry. Like, I don't know that I have the mental capacity and wherewithal to like change this industry. So we left and we just decided to create the world that women, non-binary, and trans folks deserve to live in, and reimagine what work could look like if you could show up as your whole self, if you could be loud and opinionated, and that you could just be you. And that's where the idea for the Coven came, was creating physical space where people could connect, learn, and grow, and eventually digital space. I think one of the things that I'm really excited about that we've been able to meet is the needs of women entrepreneurs and emerging leaders. So we know that women are starting 1,800 new businesses every day. That number has grown since that stat came out 2 years ago. Even with COVID, women are starting more businesses, and the rate of BIPOC women starting businesses is even higher. And so they often lack the resources, that capital, funding, support, mentorship. They don't see themselves often doing what they want to do. And so they need representation. And so what we've been able to do is to provide programming and events and content and support in ways that allow people to see themselves in leadership, step up and into their power. And we get to see it every day. I get to see the effects of that. And so that unmet need was kind of community and training and support along the way. And over the last 4 years, we just celebrated our 4th birthday on Tuesday, on International Women's Day. We get an opportunity every day to see that impact of that work.
Thank you, Alex, and happy anniversary to the Coven.
Thanks, Anitra.
And we'll round out with Michelle to tell us about her business idea.
Yes, well, I started Luvafoodie 7.5 years ago, and my desire was to create a brand that was clean eating. And also, as a foodie, I felt that there was an untapped need out in the marketplace to have clean eating spices specifically that were unadulterated. And what that means is there's no silicone dioxide, there's no fillers, there's no chemicals, there's nothing artificial in our spices. And if you go to the spice department, or wherever your spices may be, whether they're located in the meat or seafood department, the majority of the brands in the marketplace have fillers in it, chemicals. And I felt that there needed to be a gourmet line of spices that were unadulterated and really tasty and clean eating. And that's the premise of Luvafoodie. In addition, 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with heart disease and had a stent put in my LAD and then suffered a heart attack. So what I did then is I decided to get involved with the American Heart Association and come out with, in addition to my grilling spices, a line of salt-free spices that had a lot of flavor and could address people living with heart disease, and also people with diabetes, or people who just didn't want to put a lot of sodium in their diet, because sodium is not really good for you. And so the need was really to create a clean eating brand that was healthy and communicate a healthy lifestyle to everybody out there that I didn't feel was available with the current spice selection. And then I also developed during the pandemic a line of all natural gourmet instant cold brew iced teas. And they're basically a large tea bag that you brew in the sun or near the sun, and they're all naturally flavored. The majority of the teas in the tea market and that you would find on the tea aisle are artificially flavored. So my teas are all naturally flavored. So my tagline at Luvafoodie is eat clean, drink clean, be well, and stay well. And that's really the message that I communicate with the Luvafoodie brand. And it's a lifestyle, not just a line of spices or a line of iced teas. And then lastly, I created, out of the love that I have for animals, specifically my dog, Little Lucy, who lived to be 17 and a half. She just passed last May. It'll be a year this May. She became very ill, and I started to work with a veterinarian that I was taking her to. How do you get a dog to eat? What happens when they age? And I found out that there's a lot of very good health benefits to giving both dogs and cats natural herbs. And so I created a line of spices called Dog Lovers, and also Cat Lovers for dogs and cats. And it's actually all natural spices that you mix in their dog or cat food, and it entices them to eat. It helps with cognitive issues. And I know a lot of people who use the Dog Lovers and Cat Lovers, and their dogs and cats will not eat their food without mixing without it, because it has natural, has ginger and turmeric and cinnamon, so it smells really good. And if you have a pet, the first thing you want to do is, a dog or cat will not eat their food before they smell it. So if it smells good, they'll eat it. And that's just a natural way of a dog or cat eats. So be aware of that the next time you feed your pet. So that's Luvafoodie. It's a clean eating brand, and I like to share my story and try to help others live a healthier lifestyle.
Great, thank you, Michelle. So we're going to switch focus a little bit, and I see that people are starting to populate some of the Q&A and asking about the challenges of being a woman entrepreneur. And I'm going to ask people to hold on to that for a little bit, because we're going to flip it and actually ask the three of you, what are some of the benefits of being a woman entrepreneur, which I don't think we always get a chance to hear about, the benefits in spite of some of the challenges. So let's hear from Alex first about what some of those benefits of being a woman entrepreneur might be.
Yeah, well, like I said, I get the opportunity to see so many women, non-binary, and trans folks really succeed in entrepreneurship. We have just over 1,000 members, and half are entrepreneurs or freelancers. And so some of the things that we see as real benefits, and there's actual studies about emotional intelligence, but we know that women lean into that space sometimes. We know that women tend to carry more nurturing or support or empathy for their entire team. And so we know that when women are on leadership teams, the teams succeed because somebody cares about their well-being. And I don't want to say that as women have to carry that emotional labor, because it often does fall on them to be the caretaker on the team, and that shouldn't necessarily be something that women have to carry all the time. But what I think that men and other folks can kind of learn from femme identifying people is that that's not a detriment. Having emotions is not a detriment, and it actually can improve the success of your teams. When we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, which so many people are trying to figure out how to do that well. So much of it has to do with belonging and feeling a sense of belonging on a team, not just because there are other people that look like you, but that the people who are on the team care about you beyond your performance, beyond your productivity. They care about making sure that you have the resources you need to be successful. So I feel like entrepreneurial teams that are built by women, or at least a diverse team with women present, they tend to be more successful and they tend to retain talent more. So those are all real benefits of being a woman entrepreneur. The other thing I will say is that because women have been often at we're starting, the starting line is here, but we're starting here, constantly, right? Like women get 2% of VC funding. That's ridiculous. 2% of VC funding, and yet we have 45% of the businesses. It's insane to me. So the fact that we're starting behind, we are met with many challenges. And so we are resilient, I would say, especially Black women. We are resilient. We are really strong. And that doesn't mean, again, that we should have to be strong and resilient all of the time. But a benefit of having a Black woman on your team or leading a business is, we're going to get the shit done. So like, we're going to do it. We're going to get it done. We've had way too many, barriers come up that we've been able to smash, and we're going to continue to do that. So I think we are some of the strongest leaders out there because we have to be.
I mean, I'm a little biased, but inclined to agree, but
Affirmative.
Right. Let's go back to Michelle. What do you see as some of the benefits of being a woman entrepreneur?
Right. Well, I worked several years in a male-dominated CPG world where I was the minority. And when I decided to start Luvafoodie, I thought, well, this is going to benefit me and it's going to benefit other women because I'm going to share all my struggles from the beginning, working for corporate America, working in a male-dominated area where a lot of times I didn't have a voice, because when I did speak up, it wasn't favorable because I was the minority. So part of creating Luvafoodie was for me to benefit by working with other intelligent, empowering, influential entrepreneurs, other women who get what we're doing, connecting. I'm part of a women's group in the Twin Cities where all of us are involved with the food industry. So knowing that I'm not alone in the struggle and connecting with other women that are going through the same exact dealings that I'm dealing with, whether it's rejection, whether it's trying to get finances, whether it's trying to get support, that empowers me. And that's what keeps me going. And if I can help young entrepreneurs, young women starting out, that's my why.
Thanks, Michelle. Let's round it out with Joy.
Yes, Alex, absolutely identify with what you're saying about resiliency, especially. I think that resiliency is just a whole lot easier in community. And it's part of why I appreciate the Coven as well. But I think women are generally better at building this community, and ultimately, like, that's what we've seen as a small women-owned business is we find a lot of community, people willing to collaborate, to build each other up, and how do we support one another in business. And I think that's just really beautiful, because so often in the business world, it's all about competition and crushing and competing and all that. And I just love the women-owned business little corner of the world. And I see that within mission-driven businesses as well. In our fair trade world, we call it co-opetition, because we want all the other fair trade businesses to succeed as well. We understand what the supply chains look like for them and the impact that they're making around the world. So and yeah, we see that across our global supply chains as well. So many local women leaders that we're working with around the world. The UN states that for every dollar a woman makes, between 80 and 90 cents goes back to her family and her community, as opposed to 30 to 40 cents by men. And so that's one of my favorite statistics, because I think it just proves that women have this superpower to create community, to make the world a better place. And often it can be as seemingly simple as just being involved in a formalized economy. What I love about entrepreneurship specifically is the flexibility that it provides. As a person dealing with a lot of different mental health situations and whatnot, I've been able to create a schedule and a life that works really well for me, and it reinforces a lot of my goals, and I can share that love with my team members too. You need a mental health day, do it. And I think that's just one of the beautiful things about entrepreneurship is we can start from scratch and just figure out how do we build a business in the most ethical way that we can dream up, and not necessarily follow it's been done in this way before. How do we build it in a way that works for us? And so that's what gets me excited about entrepreneurship.
Thanks, Joy. I love that language of a superpower. So I was just taking notes. I was like, yes, I must share this with other folks that I know. Let's move to our last question for the panelists, and then we'll open it up for some discussion. So be thinking of your questions that you have in the audience. But tell us about a time when you failed and what you learned from it. Let's start with Michelle.
Yes, well, if you look at the word definition, it means lack of success. And I really feel that in reality, failure is just another opportunity to begin again. And that's what I did when I originally started Luvafoodie. It was a singles dating website for foodies. And I, being single and being a foodie my entire life, food is a big part of my family and it was a big part of my life. I realized after about a year that it wasn't going to be a singles dating website. It was going to become a clean eating brand, a brand that people could love and enjoy and be healthy. And so I don't look at it as failure. I look at it as I pivoted to start Luvafoodie in a new direction, and that's what I did. So I think coining the word failure is a negative connotation. In reality, I think we can say it's just another opportunity to start again, start a new path, find a different direction, and that's what I did.
Thanks for that reframe. I think that can be really important about how we use language to talk about our experiences. Joy, let's bounce back to you and talk about maybe something that you've learned from a failure or a need to pivot.
Yeah, I guess within both of those things, failure, like the first thing that comes to mind is, we've set different revenue goals and just like falling a little bit short of that. And like the team, gets all whipped up about like, we're going to do it. We're going to make it. We're doing this, we're doing big things. But I think, in some of that failure, when we don't hit that number, that's ultimately always when you learn the most. And we can look back at, okay, what are the things we're going to do differently going forward? But also like we've seen that like maybe we're measuring, maybe that was the wrong goal, like in 2020, shocker, but like we didn't hit our revenue goals. I know. And ultimately it was our I would say our most impactful year ever. And we pivoted, we started selling face masks. We were partnering with our artisan partners in India and Cambodia who they already had these designs. And because we have more collaborative supply chains than traditional retail supply chains, we could they were willing to share those patterns with us. So we got our face masks on the market right away. I felt pretty gross about the idea of profiting off of something that was necessary for public health during a pandemic. And so we decided to donate 100% of the proceeds from the sale of our face masks. And so we ended up donating $117,000 to date now since the start of the pandemic. And we donate that to our artisan partners. They're still well taken care of with the jobs and whatnot, but they were seeing the vulnerable families in their communities suffer. And so there was no strings attached money to be okay, what makes the most sense in their community? So they were buying food and medicine and cleaning supplies and oxygen tanks and revamping artisan workshops to make COVID relief centers. Anyways, I think similar to how Michelle was talking about the reframe, I think that was a necessary thing for our team to not feel okay, yep, we didn't hit that goal. Yep, we did everything we could to get there. How are we going to do it differently? But then also we did some good stuff, we still made things happen. So that's the first failure that comes to my mind, but I've got a bazillion of them as I assume most entrepreneurs do.
And not even just the entrepreneurs. So I could also have lots of things that I've had to reframe. So really appreciate that example. And Alex, what about you?
Yeah, I think if you're not failing at some point, you're not leaping big enough, if nothing has failed, you haven't done the thing yet. So like, and when we think about failures, like they don't have to be like big, giant, like had to close my business kind of failures. They could be like, we failed to miss our revenue goals. Like I failed to give somebody constructive feedback that would have made the situation better. I failed to be a good leader today. I failed to show up in a really authentic way. Like those are all failures. I think for, you know, one failure that I like to share with people, because I think when you take your eye off the ball of your business, like your business as an entrepreneur, like your business doesn't thrive unless you're paying attention to it. Like, cause your energy, like where you put your energy is where what's going to grow. So in 2019, before the pandemic, we were raising, you know, venture dollars and impact fund money to grow our business really rapidly. And I'm very glad that, you know, in hindsight, I'm so glad we didn't expand faster, because COVID hit like the second we opened our second location, and it was devastating and caused us to pirouette and pivot and do all of the things that we needed to do to survive. And you know, we made it on the other side. But in 2019, we were at a point where, you know, we didn't know if we were going to be open at the end of the year, because in October, kind of looking up after being on the road for 9 months and looking at our books and being like, well, you know, we haven't been doing sales in the way that we thought we were. Like we're spending a ton of money to build out our second location. I'm traveling every week. And so I'm not on the ground, you know, paying attention to all the things that I need to pay attention to in the business. And, you know, that recognition of like, oh, I failed to, one, set my team up properly to, you know, succeed without me. And two, like, I was not doing the thing that I need to do as an entrepreneur, which is to do at least one thing every day that drives revenue. And even though we were raising, you know, upwards of $1 million that year, that's not revenue, that's a loan. So like, that's like debt. So it wasn't like, you know, it doesn't count on your books as profit. And that was, you know, is something I knew, but it like, when you get to that point and you're like, gosh, we raised $1 million, high five. And then you look at your books and you're like, oh my God, like I have to make payroll next week. And so I came off the road and got to work and like really drove sales. And in Q4, we had the best, you know, quarter that we've ever had, opened our second location in Q1 of the next year. And we had so much momentum. And I think what, you know, when COVID hit and it felt like somebody had pulled the brakes on our runaway train, we were able to pivot quickly because we had just done that. You know, we had just, it's like a muscle. Failing is a muscle that you have to practice. And if you don't practice it, it can feel devastating. And I could see us, you know, in 2019, had we not been able to like be nimble and resilient and figure it out, like having been like, well, we failed, it's time to go home, pack it up, you know, like forget it. And instead we just decided to like make, you know, do what we needed to do and like get back in the focus. And so I think the more that you can build that muscle of failure, the quicker you're going to be, the less it's going to feel like failure. It'll just be curiosity. Well, how are we going to get out of this one? Like, that's the question I ask myself every day. Well, how are we going to get out of this day? Like, you know, and that can apply to parenthood. That can apply to all of the things. So, yeah.
Yeah, so real. Thank you for that. So we've reached the end of our questions that we came up with for our panelists, and a few of you have put some questions into the chat, and we'll read those out and let you know whatever panelist would like to take on this that question to respond. So that way we can spend the last half or so of our time together in some discussion. So the first question is, I think it was Alex who started to discuss some of the challenges entrepreneurs are facing: representation, lack of resources. What are some of the other challenges entrepreneurs are facing in the current market?
Well, I'll respond quickly, and I would love to hear from, you know, Michelle in particular, and Joy with supply chain issues. But I know like people who have physical products or restaurants. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs are struggling with the cost of goods right now. Everything is so expensive. I mean, gas is ridiculous. I mean, just filling up my Jeep to get somewhere is like insane. And I just have to drive into work. I think one thing right now in this time, and we talk about this a lot, so this is like maybe not unique to us, but because we rent spaces, the cost of rent is really high. And in 2020, we got a lot of rent relief, which we were really lucky and grateful to have. And we had a lot of grants come in that year. In 2020, we actually like profited slightly, but it was because we had all of these grants, because we had forgiven PPP funding, all of those things, which were really helpful and supportive and allowed us to keep our staff. What happened is, and then in 2021 came, the rent came due and like there were no grants, there was no additional funding. And so now we have all of that back pay of rent to pay. And there's no additional revenue coming in other than what we're generating. And so the challenge that I'm pushing, you know, state and local officials is that like, just because 2021 came doesn't mean that like we're not still suffering from the pandemic. Like this is going to be a long-term issue for entrepreneurs. And I know for sure that we are not the only ones that are experiencing this like gut punch of lack of resources after coming off of a year where everyone wanted to fund women and, you know, Black folks and BIPOC entrepreneurs. And that was like a huge opportunity for a lot of people to get things off of the ground, but none of that funding was sustainable. So I challenge a lot of people to think about, if you're going to do funding for people, think about what is the sustainability of this, because $5,000 today is not going to, you know, be $20,000 next year unless I have, you know, the additional, that kind of like ongoing support.
Yeah, I would agree with you. For me, because the basis of Luvafoodie is a product-driven brand, right? And so the COVID hit, and one of the ways people buy something is they taste it. So I did a lot of demos up till COVID, and without being able to be in the stores, I had to really figure out, how am I going to survive when you can't go and do demos because it wasn't allowed. People were doing online shopping instead of going to the stores because of COVID. So what I did is I really, really focused on building my online presence, both in social media and on other online platforms, not just your typical ones, but smaller wholesale ones where smaller stores could buy the product. And so it was a shift. In reality, I actually did more sales last year than I did the prior year. And the first year of COVID, I did more sales than I did before COVID. And that's without me being in the stores, because I aggressively decided I was not going to let this brand or this company die or fail because of COVID. I just worked twice as hard, which is pretty hard to believe since I work 7 days a week, 24 hours. But that's what I did. So I would say as an entrepreneur, you just have to continue to find new ways, new resources, pivot if you have to. And it's a lot of hard work. And if you've got the tenacity to figure out problems and solve problems, you will succeed. And I think all of us on this panel are very tenacious. And I think that is the key ingredient to being an entrepreneur. And I think women are more tenacious than men. That's just my opinion. But I know there's a lot of tenacious men out there, so please don't email me.
I love it. I think generally the largest challenge in being a woman entrepreneur, besides cash flow challenges, I feel you, Alex, is like just not being taken seriously. I think especially like as a young woman, as a queer woman, I just feel like so often people are like, good for you, go save the world. Or like, they think that like I'm running, you know, a tiny jewelry company where I'm making it myself. And like, also there's nothing wrong with that. But like, you know, the reality is I'm running, you know, $1 million business that we're selling all over the world. And we have all these partnerships, but I just feel like I am regularly not taken seriously. And so different like press opportunities, I feel like that has been super helpful in terms of just like gaining some amount of credibility, which I wish wasn't necessary, but feels like it is. I think the main challenge that we've had throughout COVID is, this may not be a popular opinion, but the presence of Amazon. I like early on in COVID, it felt like people were going out of their way to support small businesses and BIPOC owned businesses and women owned businesses. And like, gosh, that was so lovely. And then like we all got tired, we're all exhausted of existing in this, the world as it currently is. And so Amazon has become an easy option for everybody. And it makes it, I think, more difficult for small businesses, especially consumer products. One way we've tried to turn that challenge into a positive is we actually ship out 100% of our products in reused packaging. And so all those stupid Amazon bubble mailers that everybody has, we take them and we'll ship things back out in them. So Amazon's actually giving us free packaging, which I'm here for. But yeah, it's good for our bottom line. It's better for the world. There's nothing else you can do with those besides throw them away. So yeah, anyways, those are the two challenges that come to mind.
Great. Someone left a comment for you, Joy, that just says, so true, Joy. People underestimate women and assume they are not doing something amazing. So I think a lot of people are like feeling everything you're putting down.
If one more person calls my 4-year-old business with 2 locations and a digital community and 1,000 members a project, I will literally jump out a window. Just
again,
your project
language
is so cool. Yeah, language matters.
It's like, it's not a project. I'm not putting macaroni on construction paper. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any team members? Like, oh, do you have an Etsy shop? Yep. Thanks.
All of the things. Go ahead, Michelle.
I agree 100%. I often say, and I've said in the beginning, this is not a hobby. This is my livelihood. So take it seriously. I'm taking it seriously. This is not just, some people would say in the beginning, oh, do you have another job? Or is this your real job? Or are you doing this on the side? No, this is 150% of my life. And so it's not a hobby. It's not a little project. It's my livelihood. So please take it seriously. Yeah.
That's a good lead in to one of the other questions that we got about what word of advice would you give to women who are thinking about starting their own businesses? And maybe that looks like just completely starting and jumping in, and maybe some people are working other jobs and starting out another business on the side. But what kind of advice would you give to women who want to follow in some of your footsteps?
I'll go there. I'll start. I would say if you have a good idea, number one, if you have a drive like no other and are willing to work and put in the hard work and believe in yourself, then go for it. But if, and I think there's nothing wrong with having another job in the beginning to support your dream or your business until it gets up and going. But then at some point you have to take a leap of faith and say, I can't do both because it's not humanly possible. I have to dive in, get wet, and then just give it your all. And if you survive after 3 to 5 years, you're going to make it. I mean, that 3 to 5, most companies don't make it. There's a ton of startups, but if you're on year 5, you're going to make it. So go for it. You have one life.
I love that, Michelle. I would echo that. I would say, like, don't quit your day job in the test phase of your business. Don't go into debt, like launching your business. There are so many ways to test a market before you invest your entire life savings and rack up a ton of credit card debt. There's crowdfunding, there's, small markets, there's different ways that you can test things to make sure that you have a viable product with a viable audience that is willing to pay what you need to make the business successful. I'll give a quick plug for I Fund Women, which is a crowdfunding campaign started by women for women. So when you're in testing phase and you just like want to sell some stuff just to see, like, do people want this? Crowdfunding is an amazing way to do that and get some like non-dilutive capital, meaning nobody else owns a piece of your business. You're just selling the product, and that can be a product or a service. So and they offer so much support. We raised $350,000 on the platform. That's why I bring it up, to start our business, to open our first location. That's very rare. So like, don't go out and think you're going to raise $350,000. But if you need like 10, 30, 50, $100,000 to like get something off the ground, or hire your first person or pay yourself, whatever that looks like, try crowdfunding, try something where you're not going into debt in your first day of business.
Yeah, I echo the start small, test the market, but also I'm not a fan of the word crazy, but I don't have an alternative in this way. But like, if there's people that, if nobody thinks you're crazy, you're not doing something right. Like there should be some haters, but as long as you make sure that you've got a community that like really does believe in your idea, I think you can, making sure you're listening to the market and whatnot, you can make the changes and pivot where you need to make that happen. The other thing is like, know your numbers. Ooh, like, I think it's easy to jump into it and get so excited and be like, look at this beautiful product, I can sell this, I can do that, whatever it is, and like, yay. But also understanding your margins and costs and whatnot are just so critical to what your business is going to look like 5 years from when you launch it. Like especially with a wholesale retail business, I've learned so much about that and margins and like things that I wish I knew right off the bat when we started. So yeah, don't underestimate the value of a little financial planning and projections, even though financial projections are ultimately just like made up, but make them up so that you've got some amount of a plan.
Yeah, thanks for that. There seems to be a lot of interest in kind of this making the leap, right? And so someone actually in the chat also said when you're in a space where your values aren't reciprocated and you can't show up as yourself, how do you decide to stay and change the culture versus leaving and creating a new community or business, which is, I imagine, a really tough decision. So
I'm like, when you get fed up, I'm just like, I'm not putting any more energy into things where the energy isn't appreciated. Like, find your people, peace out. I don't know. I wish I could be like, let's change existing systems. And sometimes I'm like, they weren't built for the change that we want to see. So like, build something new that incorporates those values from the beginning.
Yeah. I have a very low tolerance for bullshit, but this is after many years of putting up with a lot of it. So I think that the question is something I hear from people every day. How do I know when to leap? How do I know when to transition? How do I know if I can change the culture of an organization? It is your own capacity, right? Like, do you feel empowered still? Maybe you're beating your head against the wall every day, but maybe you're creating a community within your organization that will someday have a tipping point where you're able to make real policy change in your organization, or step into leadership and change the culture. But that's a long game, and so you can do it for as long as you can do it, and then it might be time to go either find another organization that better suits your values or start the organization that suits your values. But it's not necessary. The question is always so challenging because it's like, I ran out of, can I swear, Anitra? I already did. I ran out of fucks in the advertising industry. I had no more to give. And so my capacity for all of it was so limited. But I have really amazing friends who are still in that same agency, who have changed the agency over time. I just wasn't going to be the one to do it. I tried, and then I just ran out of the fucks. So and they still have some more. So they're going to continue to do that work. And I really, truly support them because there are women, particularly BIPOC women in that agency, that need that support and love. And I'm so glad that there are people there who are willing to stay. But that's totally up to you and your own bucket of fucks.
I would say for me, the leap of faith was when the company that I was working for ended up selling all of their business in North America. And I was in my mid-career. I'm a lot older than all of you. And it was a defining moment. So for me, the leap of faith was, okay, if I'm going to do this, I spent my entire career in sales, selling to large customers, selling somebody else's product, selling their, brand. And I thought, I can do this myself. I have the skill sets, I have the knowledge, and this is a defining moment. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now. So I would say to all of you out there that there isn't a exact moment when, but I think there's an aha moment inside of you that says, now's the time. So listen to your voice, listen to that inner, drive that you may have, and then you'll know. You just have to follow your heart. And that's what I did. That was my leap of faith.
Yeah.
Women's intuition. There's nothing like it.
Very true. And I feel like we could have a whole session of just talking about how do we make the leap, because that feels like that's a lot of fertile ground in that one. I am aware that we're running a little low on time, and we have a couple of more questions, a few more. And again, maybe we just need to do a part 2 or something. But one of the questions is about support and finding networks. And so how have you been able to connect entrepreneurs for mentorship and collaborative ventures? Have you found effective, sustainable steps that others can magnify in our work with women?
I find them in spaces that share those same values and community and whatnot. I've found a lot of that through the Coven. I've found a lot through Business Women's Circle, and through Women Venture are probably the primary ways that I've found a lot of that mentorship, or just like people who know what's up, and like can wrap their head around both being a profitable business and being a business that exists to make an impact in the world, for profit and for good. Because a lot of times I struggled to find mentors that got both of those aspects. It was like one or the other. But yeah, within those 3 spaces, especially, I found support.
Yeah, I think women tend to be, oh, sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
You go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say women tend to be, I find more collaborative now than ever before. I think, competition, like Joy mentioned, is always very real, but we think about them as collaborative business models or business partners. And I think the more you can connect with other people who have like values, and if it is competitive and it doesn't feel right, like you don't have to stay. So I think from a collaborative space, like we're all just trying to survive here. So, I think the more connections you can make, the better. I think that makes for the best businesses that are collaborative.
Absolutely. And I think for me, I joined some women groups. I joined some networking groups. One of the opportunities for me that was very successful is LinkedIn. And I don't know if all of you are in LinkedIn, but there's a family, there's a LinkedIn community, and it's a ton of networking. And I actually was granted this year a LinkedIn live show, and not too many people have that access. And so it's my way of sharing other entrepreneur stories. I do focus on a lot of women. Today I've got a really great show coming up at 3 o'clock Central Time, and I encourage everybody to get involved with LinkedIn, because that's been one of my most rewarding and networking tools that I've used to be a success, and also finding like-minded women and men that are sharing the same entrepreneurial drive and spirit and path that I am going down. So,
Michelle, someone has a question of what is the LinkedIn group, the link to that group, or how can people find it, or can you put some information in the chat maybe about how people can connect with that group?
So LinkedIn, everybody's welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just you can look me up, Michelle Mazzara. And then I published today the LinkedIn live show, 3 o'clock Central Time. So if you are following me and we're connected, you'll see it stream live. And then LinkedIn, after the show airs, then it streams the next day to YouTube, Facebook. So it will stream to Luvafoodie YouTube, Luvafoodie Facebook. And then anyone who would like more information, like I said, I'm always willing to help network, but just basically connect with me on LinkedIn and you'll see all my shows. Typically, they're every Monday at 4 o'clock Central Time. I have a fantastic, actually the woman that I have on today, she was voted one of the top 5 most influential people on LinkedIn. And on Monday, my guest is also in the top 5. His name is Michael Ray, and he started the Smile Project. And these people are so inspiring. If you're having a bad day, honestly, that's my mission. And I'd welcome to have both of you on my show too, because I think a lot of people could learn from what you've done and be inspired by both of you. So maybe we need to set that up.
Awesome. We do have one last question. I'm not sure if we have time. We can do maybe some quick answers. And I know we want to do just a little bit of wrap up. I want to go back a little bit to Joy's great advice of talking about knowing your numbers. And so someone said, how did you organize your financial management systems initially and now as you've grown?
Like the straight answer on that is I started on Google Sheets and now I'm in QuickBooks. But there's a woman, Jane Zilch at Women Venture. Hire her. I don't know, take the classes at Women Venture. She has taught me everything I need to know about finance. It's been like game changing for sure. But yeah, the biggest thing for me was just like understanding it more than just like theoretically.
We did the same thing. I will say that we had somebody come in who was a friend of ours who understands spreadsheets better than anyone I know, and just sat and listened to the 4 of us talk through what the dream of the Coven was. So back in the summer of 2017, before we had a space, you know, she sat at the table with us, like, and we just were dreaming about, oh, it'll have this and it'll have that, and we'll want an artist over here and this and private offices. And every once in a while, she would be like, how much toilet paper do you think you'll need? You know, or like, is that person full-time or part-time? And then she would like keep writing down in the spreadsheet. And then at the end of the weekend, she stayed with us for an entire weekend, kind of like walked through each line item, and nothing was the same, right? I mean, to Joy's point, like it's all made up, right? So it's like, you know, but at least we had a starting point, right? And then we could say this could make money if we did this. So I would say like have either somebody do it or you do it, where you go through and you just think through like every possible expense and every possible way you could make money in your business.
That's the dream, to have somebody just come listen to you and then put it together.
Yeah. Or just be like, hey, idiots, don't do that. You know, like have a person to go, hey, idiots, don't do that.
All right. I mean, I just feel like, honestly, Alex, people are going to be like, who was this friend that worked with y'all? And so you may be getting some emails. I'm quite sure. So we only have a few minutes left, but I want to thank Michelle and Joy and Alex for just being here and sharing all of this wisdom. I have several pages of notes just for myself as someone who's interested in entrepreneurship. And so this has been incredibly enlightening for me, and I'm sure for a lot of our participants as well. So thank you all for being here too, for spending your lunch hour with us. And I want to turn it back over to Rebecca in case she has some wrap up things for us.
Yes, thank you so much, Anitra, for leading us in this discussion. Thank you to Michelle, Joy, and Alex. I really appreciate your participation today and time in our panel. Definitely lots of great takeaways, very inspiring and refreshing. We have some upcoming programs that others might be interested in who are listening today. We have a Women in Power series that has career programming for folks who identify as early career to mid-career and then late career. And that information can be found at umetalumni.org/virtual. And actually, Anitra is leading our program on March 23rd. So if you're interested in that, please register for our program. And then next, we have another program here that is led by the Women's Center. And Anitra, do you want to mention anything here?
Sure. Actually, this is something that we are co-sponsoring that is hosted by the Center for Women in Center for Women on Gender, Gender, and Public Policy here at the U. And it's a follow-up to one of their earlier events a few years ago about Indigenous women leaders. And so it's Leading for the Seventh Generation, an opportunity to learn from Native leaders about a different leadership paradigm that might be really useful for the times that we're in and looking ahead many generations to come. So definitely check it out. You can go to z.umn.edu/7th-gen and get the registration details and all the speaker details. So definitely feel free to check that out.
Great, thank you so much. And we'll be sharing out the recording of today's session within about 2 to 3 business days, and also the information about the upcoming events as well. And then for those who are interested in networking and meeting more folks who are students or alumni, we have a free online platform called the Maroon and Gold Connections. Maroon and Gold Network rather. So definitely please join that. I'll send out that information as well. Thank you so much to everyone for participating today, and we really appreciate it. Have a good day.